Hey Rockstars, Troy Dean here from Rockstar Empires. How fancy pants was that intro, hey? Made you wait for a minute before we went live. Building anticipation. Now I know the intro did also say Tuesday Tech, and that's because I just didn't get around to making a new intro for today's live stream. However, in this live stream, this is epic because today what I'm going to show you is how you can create your online course and get paid to do it and get paid handsomely to do it. And also, I'm going to show you one very ugly web page that has gone on to generate a 7-figure-a-year business. The reason I'm talking about this is because I'm very passionate about online courses. I've seen the difference that has lower third. Thank you very much. I've seen the difference that has made to our business. Selling and online courses is just amazing. It's fun. You get to meet awesome people. You impact people's lives. You get to teach what you know, and you get paid for it. And it's totally scalable. Online courses are lots of fun. We love it. We're having an absolute ball doing it, and we teach it at Rockstar Empires. We teach how to create and sell your own online course. And there's lots of conversation within the kind of online course space, and I've been listening to podcasts and reading blogs, and people are saying, you know what you need to do is the way to do this is to run a webinar and then sell your course from the webinar. So run a free webinar, teach your face off on that webinar, and then sell your course on that free webinar. And that's the way to pre-sell your course before you actually spend months of your life making the course. And it works. It's a very kind of lean startup methodology. You actually sell the product before you go and make it. There's a few problems with that model, and I'm going to walk you through them right after this. So the problem with that model is way too much fun. The problem with that model is this. Let's say you want to sell 100 copies. Actually, let's be modest about this. Let's say you want to sell 50 copies of your online course and you're selling it for $500 each, right? And you're selling it, 50 copies would be 25 grand. Is that right? I can't even do the math on this. I think that's right. If you're selling 50 copies of your course for $500, that's 25 grand, yeah? Now let's work out the math. Let's work out what you need to do on a free webinar to sell 50 copies of your course for $500. And this is based on the assumption that you are really good at running webinars and selling from webinars, which if you're just starting out, you won't be. But let's pretend that you're really good at it, okay? So the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to get, to sell 50 copies of your course from a webinar, you're going to need to get 500 people on that webinar, right? To turn up on that webinar, because you're going to convert at about 10%. So you're going to need 500 people on your webinar, actually live on your webinar, to convert 10% of them to buy your course. And that is if you know what you're doing on webinars and you can convert at 10%. As I said, if you're just starting out, you won't be converting that high. But let's pretend that you know what you're doing. So how do we get 500 people on a webinar? Well, a free webinar. Well, webinar show-up rates are around about 20 to 25% if you really know what you're doing and you're really good and you've got a great pre-webinar sequence. Let's pretend you have. If you haven't, you're going to probably get 10 to 15% show-up rates. If you know what you're doing and you're getting a 20% show-up rate and you need 500 people to turn up on your webinar, you're going to need 2,500 people to enroll and register for your webinar for free to then get 500 of them to turn up, roughly speaking, right? And if you know what you're doing, you'll sell 50 copies of your course and you'll make 25 grand. So how do you get 2,500 people on your webinar for free? There's a couple of ways. If you've already got an established audience, then you can spend your time emailing and hustling and putting together a great page to convince people to register for your webinar and making a very compelling offer and promising to teach lots of cool stuff. If you don't have an established audience, then you will need to, and that will take you time and cost you money to do all that because it's your time, right? If you don't have an established audience, then you're going to have to spend some money on ads. And I can tell you from experience, it's going to cost you, if you know what you're doing, it's going to cost you somewhere between $3 and $5 for a lead. That is, it's going to cost you somewhere between $3 and $5 to get someone to register for your webinar from Facebook ads. If you don't know what you're doing, it's going to cost you probably $8 to $10, or in some cases, $17.24. Let's not hope we all go there. Let's pretend you know what you're doing, and let's pretend that you can get leads signing up for your webinar for $4, right? Let's say $5. Let's keep a nice round figure. $5. And how many people do we need? 2,500 people to register on the webinar at $5 each. I can't even do the math on this. 2,500 people at $5 each. It's $12,500. $12,500 that you'll spend to then sell $25,000 worth of courses. Now, you'd do that every day of the week, wouldn't you? Because you put $12,500 into the campaign and you make $25,000 on the back of the course. However, what if you don't have $12,500 to throw at Facebook? Well, when we started out, we didn't have $12,500 to throw at Facebook. We didn't have a lot. We didn't have much, actually. So what we did was we ran a paid webinar, and I'm going to show you in a moment all the screenshots of this beautiful, ugly page that started this all. I'm going to take you inside our accounts and show you some of our analytics and some of our figures. And this is what happened. We ran a paid webinar to our audience, and I'll show you exactly how that converted in a moment. We sold 84 tickets in about 48 hours to this paid webinar, between $97 and $197 for a webinar. When everyone else was running free webinars, this is in May 2013. Everyone's running free webinars. Everyone's telling us to run free webinars. We ran a paid webinar between $97 and $197. We did $9,900 in ticket sales in about 48 hours. And out of those 84 people that registered, 76 turned up to the webinar, which is an extremely high show up rate. Out of those 76, we didn't sell anything on the webinar because they'd already paid to be on the webinar. So we'd made almost 10 grand to run the webinar. Out of those, we ran a 2-hour webinar. I taught my face off. It was epic. It was amazing. For those of you who were on that webinar, you will remember it well. After the webinar, 55 of those webinar attendees filled in a survey, which I'll show you in a moment. And then out of those 55, we had a conversation with half a dozen of them on Skype. They helped us design the product exactly how they wanted, price points and all. And then we opened the doors for an initial weekend, and 55 people bought at $97 a month. Boom, we just added $5.5 grand in recurring revenue to our business, and now we had a membership website up and about. We didn't spend any money up front except marketing to our own internal email list. And yes, at that time, we had an email list of about 8,500 people. How had we had an email list of 8,500 people? We'd been selling a WordPress plugin and giving away free ebooks for about 3 years prior to all of this happening, right? Maybe 4 years prior to all of this happening. So yes, we had built a list. Now, if you haven't got a list, you're going to have to spend money. And so what I'm saying here is I think you're better off spending money getting people to a paid webinar. But there are some distinctions, and there are some things that you will do that will make this catastrophically fail. There are some things that you can do that will make this work. I'm going to show you what they are right now. Oh, look at him. Isn't that an ugly sales page? Let me walk you through why this worked. First off, we have some logos up the top, which our audience were familiar with. So they kind of knew who we were, right? And then straight away in the headline, I call out our target audience and I tell them the problem they've currently got and how I can help them. If you're a WordPress consultant and you'd like to work with better clients on better projects and demand the higher fees you deserve, then the WP Elevation webinar was built for you. Read on. Now, don't tell me that this can't be done in any other market, and don't tell me that this can only work in the WordPress niche, because that is just crap. This works if you know your audience. And this is the key distinction. This is really the key point that I'm trying to make here. You have to understand who your audience are, what problems they have, and what it would take to make that problem go away, okay? So what I then do is just have a very short video, 5 minutes, just me looking into my video camera, into my webcam, just like I am now. And I basically say, hey, if you're a WordPress consultant and you'd like to work with, I basically just read what's on this sales page, right? In this 90-minute content-packed webinar, you'll learn how to benefit. Green button, secure my seat, right? They click on that. It goes to I had this plugged into Eventbrite. I'll give you these tools in a moment. I had this plugged into Eventbrite to sell the tickets, and then they buy their ticket. Now, when this first went live, it said limited seats at $97. Plus, we'll rush you the WP Elevation mind map as soon as you book your seat. Once we'd sold Once we'd sold out of our 97 tickets, that price went up to 147 and then ultimately went up to 197. I'll show you those stats in a moment. So then I just tell them what to do. Step 1, check your time zone. Step 2, secure your seat. There's another green button. And then we rush them. We show them a blurred out version of the mind map. By the way, blurred out versions of anything work remarkably well because it builds enormous intrigue and people want to know what it actually looks like. And have a look at how bad this sales page is. I'm not a designer, kids, and this thing did almost $10,000 in webinar sales. Why? Because I understand my audience and I know what they want and I know what their problem is and I know how to fix it. Oh, I can't stress that enough. So here's a blurred out version of the mind map they get just for registering on the webinar. They click the button. It's a big filthy green button, secure my seat. And what we did is we emailed them and said, hey, awesome, thank you very much. Here's the mind map. Of course, it won't make sense until you're on the webinar, so please turn up to the webinar and I'll explain how to use it. That's another key distinction. Give them something that doesn't make sense and they have to turn up on the webinar for you to explain how it works. Okay, back to the filthy sales page. This is exactly what's included in the WP Elevation mind map and what you will get from this webinar. Outcome, 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 and live Q&A, okay? Big green button. Then 100% money back guarantee. Then there was a little widget here plugged into Eventbrite. They could just buy their ticket straight here. That's obviously expired now because the event is over. And then some social proof, testimonial and a Twitter screenshot, then a little bit of blah about me. Now you might notice up until this point, I have not mentioned myself at all. Even in the video, I don't mention myself for the first few minutes. It's all about them and their problem and how I can help them, okay? Now at this point, I introduce who I am and some of the projects I've worked on and these big green buttons all the way. You cannot scroll on this page without seeing a green button, okay? Another ticket widget, a bonus that I'm offering them here, which was some digital products that we were selling on our website for $49. They got that for free if they were amongst the first 50 to join. And then another widget for Eventbrite, 100% money back guarantee. I absolutely promised them that if this webinar was, I said to them, we've all been on dodgy webinars and bought dodgy stuff in the past. If this is baloney and you think it's hogwash, email me and I'll give you your money back. And I gave them my email address in that video. And then just a little quote from me at the end and big green buttons everywhere, okay? Now, the truth is, I had no idea if this was going to work. And secretly, I thought, you know, the worst case scenario is that I'll get 3 people buy it. No, sorry. The worst case scenario is I'll get 10 people buy it. Then I have to turn up and do the webinar. And that's just not enough traction for me, really. 10 people buy this, that's not enough for us to prove that we've got a membership website or a course on the back end of this. If 3 people buy it, you just pretend it didn't happen and you refund their money. I've done that before. Patrick O'Doherty, this one goes out to you, my friend. I secretly was hoping that we could sell 30 tickets to this webinar, okay? Well, let me show you what happened. Let me just... and by the way, this sales page was built very quickly using unbounce.com. That's right. It was a very, very quick build in Unbounce. Let me show you actually inside the, let me show you. I'm going to take you inside our Unbounce account and show you what that looks like, okay? So in Unbounce, here we go. This is what happened. We had 1,914 visitors to this web page, and we had 743 conversions. Now, let me explain what that means. That does not mean 743 people bought the webinar. That means that 743 people clicked on a button to find out more, and which is a 38.8% conversion rate, because the action for that page and for this test was to see what they clicked on. The split test I ran here was whether or not you clicked on a button and it took you off to Eventbrite to register for the event, or you clicked on a button and a little lightbox, JavaScript lightbox pop-up popped up with the Eventbrite widget in it, okay? By the way, the pop-up won because people didn't have to go off to another website to register. So that was the split test that I ran there. 1,914 people visited, 743 people clicked on a button. The pop-up checkout won remarkably, 49.47% conversion rate there. So that's what happened. 1,914 people, 743 clicked on a button, and 84 people purchased, okay? Let me take you inside Eventbrite now and show you what happened. We had gross sales. This is in the 14th of May, 2013. That was the time of the webinar, 7 until 8:30 a.m. And gross sales of $9,951, okay? That was enough for me to say, we're onto something. We know our audience. We've put something in front of them that they obviously like. This is an idea worth pursuing. By the way, at this stage, I had not opened Keynote. I had not designed one slide, okay? Let me just show you something in our Eventbrite dashboard as well. What happened here
is VIP 50. You'll see there's a little test ticket that I bought to make sure it all worked. And then we had our early bird tickets at $97. 50 of those were sold. I couldn't believe it. When the 50 sold out, I clearly remember having a look at the results rolling in, and 50 tickets sold out within like 24 hours, and I was just completely blown away. Then what happened is we released round 2, which we called our plug-in subscriber. And so we basically said, look, it should be $197, but we're going to treat you like one of our video user manual subscribers, so you can have it for $147. Well, we sold 20 of those, and then our final price was $197, and we sold 9 of those. And the total of that was $9,951, okay? Now, yeah, that was a great bump for our business. We made almost 10 grand. It was like, yes, that was awesome. That was just like having a little mini promotion. That was sweet. But what was more important than that is the fact that we had just validated an idea, and this was the quickest way to validate the idea. What do? We set up a landing page in Unbounce. We then plugged that in to an event in Eventbrite to sell the tickets. We then plugged Eventbrite into GoToWebinar to run the actual webinar. And unfortunately, I can't show you the GoToWebinar stats because we don't have a GoToWebinar account anymore. I tried to log in before and show you that, but it doesn't work. We ran the webinar on GoToWebinar, and then we sent out a survey to everyone who was on the webinar afterwards. And this is what happened on the survey. Let me show you the survey, and then let me show you the results right after this. Okay, let me duck on over to Wufoo. This is Wufoo, which is where we built the survey. And let me show you what the survey says, okay? What is your name, email address, and website? And then 3 easy questions from the webinar. And the reason I did this is because I wanted to prove that they were on the webinar and that they were paying attention. And we also used this as a way to give them a prize. If they answered these 3 questions correctly, we gave them a prize off the webinar. How many steps are there in the closer email? The John Jantsch book is called whatever, and what do you do with a new incoming inquiry? So they had to answer those 3 questions. And then I just asked them, what is your honest opinion of the webinar? How do you rate the webinar overall? Was it too long or too short? How was the content? How was the material provided in the pack? We had this digital pack of goods that we gave them at the end of the webinar, some email templates and stuff to go and use in their business. And I wanted to find out what their thoughts were on that. Would you attend another WP Elevation webinar? Look at that question there. Would you attend another WP Elevation webinar? That's a critical question. What could we have done to make it better? What topics would you like covered in greater detail? All right. What topics would you like to learn about? Kind of a similar thing. And then look at this. Would you be interested in any of the following? More webinars, a 6-week webinar series, a members-only website, a 2-day mastermind event, or other? What other training would you be interested in? How did you find out about us? And in 25 words or less, tell us why you should win the coaching session with Troy Dean. So what we did is on the call, we offered a coaching session for anyone who filled in this survey, got the questions right, and filled in that question. We offered them a free coaching session with myself. Let me show you one of the results of this survey. And this comes from one of my dear friends and one of our most loyal customers, Dan Doherty from New South Wales. He filled in this survey. He was also on the webinar. He also joined the program when we opened a couple of weeks later. He was also one of the people that we actually interviewed on Skype to get feedback about what should be in the program. He is still one of our members. He comes to our live mastermind events. He is an absolute raving fan, and I am a raving fan of his as well. He's an absolute legend. And let me show you what Dan said when we sent that survey to him. Dan said this. I'll just hide his email address there. How many steps are there? He got all the questions right, of course. How do you rate the webinar? Excellent. Now, this was pretty typical of most of the feedback. Yep, it was excellent. The length was just right. The content was excellent. The pack was excellent. Yes, I would do it again. What could we have done to make it better? He didn't have any ideas. We had a bit of feedback from people. What topics would you like covered in greater detail? Well, everything, basically. What would you be interested in any of the following? Well, I'd be interested in all of these. And by the way, Dan has come to all of these things that we've run over the last 3 years. I originally found you on Google, and I love this. In 25 words or less, tell us why you should win the coaching session. If we were on Vulcan, I'd mind meld with you. Everything you've taught me resonates to the core of my dev beliefs. I want more. Anything else you'd like to say? I love what you're doing. I have you as a channel in SoundGecko. So aside from the awesome value you provide on the webinars, there are gold nuggets that are mentioned as well by other people on the webinars. SoundGecko, mentioned from one of the webinar guests, has fundamentally changed how I consume content. I cannot wait to blog about this particular app. So I tell you why I got Dan on a call. I reached out to Dan and said, mate, I'd love to jump on Skype and have a chat with you. And here's why. Because the responses that he's given there, you can tell that he's extremely passionate about what he does, and he's extremely passionate about what we're doing. So I jumped on a call and I said to Dan, hey man, what does this look like? I know I want to build this. You know you want me to build this. Help me design it. What does it look like? And he told us what was in the program. It's got to have a members forum. It's got to have training webinars. It's got to have live coaching calls. I want templates to download. I want you to tell me the tools that you use. I want you to give me your processes. I want you to give me your workflows. I want to connect with other members. I want to come and hang out at live events. I said, great. How much does all this cost? And he said, if it's between $1,200 and $1,500 a year, I'll sign up right now. And I said, I'm coming to get you. I went away for 2 weeks. I built the members website. We launched it. 55 people joined, including Dan, and we were up and about. A little over 3 years later, we are now, this is the inside of our members website now. It's grown. We're over 600 members. We've just closed out a launch where we enrolled 120 new students into our course. Our course is now priced at $1,497 up front. And then $97 a month rolling out after 12 months in the program. So we get people to make a commitment up front to the membership. They do the course, and then they're in a rolling membership optionally if they want to keep renewing. As I said, we have over 600 members. We're now a 7-figure a year business, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you this webpage all over again because I love it. It has got internet marketer spammer written all over it. This was the one page that generated almost $10,000 worth of webinar ticket sales, and more importantly, got us in touch with our raving fans who came to that webinar. They had paid to be on that webinar, which to me meant their opinion was worth a lot more than someone who had just come to a free webinar and hadn't paid money, because they are already invested in what we're doing. So this is my model. If you are thinking about creating and selling a course online, I have just given you the step-by-step process to make sure you get paid every step of the way, and to make sure your students pay you and then help you design the course. We also have another interesting statistic. We also have a refund rate of less than 1% of our online courses. Why? Because we get our students to tell us exactly what they want to learn in the course. That way, the course cannot fail because it teaches them everything they need to know and exactly what's important to them. Yeah? I hope this is making sense. Stay with me. Okay. I want you to get on over to the Facebook group, rockstarempires.com/Facebook, and continue this conversation. I'm going to be turning this live stream into an epic blog post that we're going to have written up and published at the rockstarempires.com website. But I want you to join the Facebook group. It is at rockstarempires.com/Facebook to continue this conversation. As you can see, I'm having a lot of fun with the Mimo Live software. I'm super passionate about helping you guys create and sell your own online courses. I've done it all, I've made all the mistakes, and we are absolutely knocking it out of the park these days. We just executed a launch, 120 new students enrolled in our program. Our processes and our team, while not perfect, they are definitely a lot tighter than they've ever been, and our team did an amazing job on chat support, answering questions, rolling out email automations. Our whole launch sequence went off pretty well, almost without a hitch. It's never quite perfect, but that's okay. That's what keeps us on our toes. So I hope you've learned a lot from this video. I hope this inspires you to take the action that you need to take. And if you are thinking about creating and selling your own online course, just remember, you don't need to build the course. When people enrolled in the original version of WP Elevation, the only content that was in there was that original webinar that we ran, cut up into 6 different lessons, yeah? And then I was just loading content in every week, a couple of times a week, to fatten it out and asking people what they wanted to learn. What do you want to learn? What do you want to learn? Now, 3 years later, it's a very different beast. The course is much better now. The content is amazing now. We have 4 coaches, including myself, plus 6 mentors. So yes, it's definitely grown, but minimum viable product is
run a paid webinar, because if you cannot get 50 people to pay you for a webinar, I promise you, you are going to struggle to get 100 or 200 or 300 people to pay you for your online course. What you will learn about your audience and what you will learn about marketing to your audience by running a paid webinar will help you ultimately sell your course. So if you've got shit tons of money to throw at Facebook, by all means, run free webinars, spend heaps of money on Facebook ads, and get those free webinar registrants to convert to your course students. I've been through the math. For me, it only works if you've got lots of money to throw around. We didn't when we started out. That's why we ran paid webinars. And for me, as I said, a paid webinar is the quickest way to validate the fact that you've got an idea that's worth pursuing, and you don't even need to make a slide. All you need to do is build a sales page. Let me just run you through some of the tools that we used again. We used unbounce.com to build that filthy landing page that convinced people that we had something worth signing up for. We used Eventbrite to run all the ticketing, and then we dropped people into GoToWebinar. And I think we might have used Zapier back then to connect Eventbrite to GoToWebinar, but don't quote me on that. So we used Eventbrite to do the ticketing, and then we used woofu.com to do the surveys after the webinar. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you create and sell an online course and turn it into a 7-figure-a-year business. I hope this has been helpful for you. I'm having an absolute blast. I will no doubt see you again very soon. And again, get on over to the Facebook group, rockstarempires.com/Facebook. Until then, it's your turn to rock.